As the First Punic War dragged on with no clear victor, Rome decided to take the fight to Carthage itself. In 256 BCE, the Roman Senate made the audacious decision to launch an invasion of North Africa. This campaign, led by the consul Marcus Atilius Regulus, was one of the most daring and consequential operations of the war. The African campaign showcased the high stakes of the conflict, the strategic brilliance and mistakes on both sides, and the emergence of an unlikely hero in the Spartan mercenary Xanthippus. By the mid-250 BCE, the First Punic War had reached a stalemate. The Romans had secured significant victories, including the capture of Agrigentum and the naval triumph at Mylae. But Carthage still controlled key strongholds in Sicily and maintained a formidable naval presence. Both powers were feeling the strain of the protracted conflict, and the Roman Senate sought a way to bring the war to a decisive end. The idea of an invasion of North Africa was bold, perhaps even reckless. It was a clear departure from Rome's traditional strategy of land-based warfare, and represented a significant escalation in the conflict. The Senate believed that a successful invasion of the Carthaginian homeland would force Carthage to sue for peace and surrender its holdings in Sicily. However, such an invasion required a massive logistical effort, the cooperation of the navy to transport the legions across the Mediterranean, and the ability to sustain an extended campaign on foreign soil. Command of the invasion was given to Marcus Atilius Regulus, a seasoned military leader who had already proven himself in Sicily. Regulus was known for his stern discipline and unwavering commitment to the Roman cause. He was a fitting choice to lead such a high-risk operation. Regulus's co-consul for the year, Lucius Manlius Vulso, was also involved in the planning, but would return to Rome after the initial phase of the campaign, leaving Regulus in sole command. The plan was ambitious. Regulus would land his forces on the North African coast, establish a secure base of operations, and then advance inland to threaten Carthage itself. The Roman fleet, consisting of more than 300 ships, would escort the invasion force and provide support during the campaign. The sheer scale of the operation was unprecedented, and the outcome would have far-reaching implications for both Rome and Carthage. In the summer of 256 BCE, the Roman fleet set sail from Sicily, laden with legionaries, supplies, and equipment. The fleet's destination was the eastern coast of modern-day Tunisia, near the town of Aspis on the Cape Bon Peninsula. This location was chosen for its proximity to Carthage and its strategic value as a launching point for further operations. The Carthaginian navy, under the command of Hanno the Great and Hamilcar, moved to intercept the Roman fleet. The two navies met off the coast of Cape Ecnomus in what would become one of the largest naval battles in history. The Battle of Cape Ecnomus was a brutal and chaotic engagement, with both sides deploying hundreds of ships and tens of thousands of men. Despite the Carthaginians' experience and skill, the Romans emerged victorious, thanks in part to their use of the Corvus boarding device, which allowed them to turn naval engagements into infantry battles. Following their victory, the Romans proceeded with the landing at Aspis. The invasion force, consisting of approximately 15,000 infantry and 500 cavalry, quickly established a fortified camp near the coast. Aspis was captured with little resistance, providing the Romans with a secure base of operations. From here, Regulus began to plan his advance into the Carthaginian heartland. The landing at Aspis sent shockwaves through Carthage. The Carthaginians had not anticipated a Roman invasion of their homeland and were unprepared for such an audacious move. The city of Carthage, one of the wealthiest and most powerful in the Mediterranean, was now under direct threat. Panic spread among the population, and the Carthaginian leadership scrambled to respond. With Aspis secured, Regulus began his march inland, aiming to bring the Carthaginians to battle and force a decisive confrontation. His initial strategy was to target Carthaginian allies and outposts, weakening Carthage's support network and gathering supplies for his army. The Roman forces moved swiftly through the fertile plains of Tunisia, capturing towns and villages with little resistance. The campaign's early successes emboldened Regulus and his men, who believed that victory was within their grasp. The Carthaginian response was slow and disorganized. The city's leadership, divided and uncertain, hesitated to commit to a full-scale battle against the Romans. Instead, they relied on a strategy of harassment and delay, hoping to wear down the invaders through attrition. Carthaginian cavalry and skirmishers launched hit-and-run attacks on the Roman columns, targeting supply lines and foraging parties. These tactics inflicted some losses on the Romans but did little to slow their advance. By late 256 BCE, Regulus had reached the vicinity of Tunis, a mere 16 kilometers from Carthage. The city's elite, realizing the gravity of the situation, finally decided to take decisive action. They recalled Hamilcar from Sicily and raised an army to defend the city. However, the Carthaginians knew that their regular forces, composed mainly of mercenaries, were no match for the disciplined Roman legions in open battle. Desperate for a solution, the Carthaginian leadership turned to an outsider, Xanthippus, a Spartan mercenary commander who had recently arrived at Carthage. Xanthippus was an experienced soldier with a deep understanding of Greek phalanx warfare and the effective use of cavalry and war elephants. He quickly gained the trust of the Carthaginian generals and was given command of the Carthaginian army. His arrival would prove to be a turning point in the African campaign. In the spring of 255 BCE, Xanthippus led the Carthaginian army out to meet the Romans in open battle. The two armies clashed on the plains near Tunis, in what would become one of the most significant battles of the First Punic War. The Carthaginian force under Xanthippus was a formidable combination of various troop types. It consisted of around 12,000 infantry, including Libyan and Numidian contingents, 4,000 cavalry, and nearly 100 war elephants. Xanthippus understood the strengths and weaknesses of his army, and devised a battle plan that capitalized on its mobility and the terror of the war elephants. On the other side, Regulus commanded a force of 15,000 infantry and 500 cavalry. The Roman army was primarily composed of heavily armed and armored legionaries, who were superbly trained for close combat. However, they were at a disadvantage in the wide, open terrain of the Tunisian plains, where the Carthaginian cavalry and elephants could operate with maximum effectiveness. Xanthippus deployed his forces with precision. The war elephants were placed at the center of the line, intended to smash through the Roman infantry formations. Behind the elephants stood the main infantry force, ready to exploit any gaps created by the pachyderms. The cavalry was positioned on the flanks, tasked with outflanking and enveloping the Roman army. Regulus, confident in the prowess of his legions, ordered his men to advance. The Roman infantry marched forward in their characteristic tight formations, while the cavalry, vastly outnumbered, attempted to hold the flanks. As the Roman lines closed in on the Carthaginians, Xanthippus gave the signal, and the elephants charged. The impact was devastating. The war elephants, with their massive size and overwhelming force, broke through the Roman lines, causing chaos and confusion. The Roman infantry, unaccustomed to facing such beasts, struggled to maintain their formations. Many soldiers were trampled underfoot or gored by the elephants' tusks. Despite their discipline, the Romans were unable to halt the charge. As the Roman center crumbled, Xanthippus ordered his infantry to advance. The Carthaginian soldiers, many of whom had been bolstered by Xanthippus's rigorous training, engaged the disordered Romans with renewed confidence. At the same time, the Carthaginian cavalry swept around the Roman flanks, cutting off any possibility of retreat. Regulus, realizing that the battle was lost, attempted to rally his men, but it was too late. The Roman army was surrounded, and the slaughter began. The Roman infantry, trapped and outnumbered, fought bravely, but were eventually overwhelmed. The Roman cavalry was annihilated, and the remnants of the legions were either killed or captured. Of the 15,000 Roman soldiers who had marched into battle, only about 2,000 managed to escape. The Battle of Tunis was a catastrophic defeat for Rome and a stunning victory for Carthage. Xanthippus's tactical brilliance had turned the tide of the African campaign, saving Carthage from the brink of destruction and demonstrating the effectiveness of combined arms warfare. The defeat at Tunis marked the end of Regulus's campaign in North Africa. Captured by the Carthaginians, Regulus was taken to Carthage as a prisoner of war. His fate would become the stuff of legend, symbolizing both the cruelty of war and the indomitable spirit of Rome. According to later Roman accounts, Regulus was subjected to horrific torture and ultimately executed by the Carthaginians. The most famous version of the story, told by Roman historians, describes how Regulus was sent back to Rome by the Carthaginians to negotiate a prisoner exchange. However, upon reaching Rome, Regulus urged the Senate to reject the Carthaginian terms, arguing that Rome should continue the war. True to his word, Regulus returned to Carthage, where he was reportedly tortured to death. His eyelids cut off to prevent him from sleeping, and then left to die under the burning sun. While the historical accuracy of these accounts is debated, there is no doubt that Regulus became a symbol of Roman virtue and stoicism. His willingness to sacrifice himself for the greater good of the Republic was celebrated in Roman culture, and used as an example of the ideal Roman citizen soldier. Aftermath: the consequences of the African campaign. The defeat at Tunis was a significant setback for Rome, but it did not end the war. The Romans, displaying their characteristic resilience, quickly regrouped and continued their efforts to subdue Carthage. However, the African campaign had exposed the limitations of Roman military power and the challenges of waging war far from home. For Carthage, the victory at Tunis was a much-needed morale boost. Xanthippus, the Spartan mercenary, was hailed as a hero, though he soon departed Carthage, either out of fear of Carthaginian politics or because he had fulfilled his contract. Carthage had survived the Roman invasion, but the war was far from over. The conflict would continue to rage on, with both sides vying for control of Sicily and the western Mediterranean. The African campaign also had a lasting impact on the strategic thinking of both Rome and Carthage. For Rome, the experience underscored the importance of naval power and the need for a capable fleet to support overseas operations. The Romans would continue to invest heavily in their navy, leading to further confrontations with the Carthaginians at sea. For Carthage, the campaign demonstrated the value of skilled military leadership and the need to adapt to changing circumstances. The city's reliance on mercenaries, while sometimes problematic, had proven effective under the right command. However, the victory at Tunis did not secure Carthage's position. The war would continue, and new challenges awaited. The African campaign was a pivotal chapter in the First Punic War, showcasing the high stakes and brutal nature of the conflict between Rome and Carthage. It was a campaign marked by bold decisions, tactical brilliance, and devastating losses. While the Battle of Tunis was a significant victory for Carthage, it was not decisive. The war would continue, with both sides learning from their experiences and adapting their strategies for the battles to come. As the First Punic War entered its next phase, the struggle for control of the Mediterranean would intensify. The lessons of the African campaign would shape the tactics and strategies of both Rome and Carthage, influencing the course of the war and the fate of the ancient world. In the next chapter, we will explore the renewed Roman efforts to dominate the seas, the battles that followed, and the continued struggle for control of Sicily. The war was far from over, and both Rome and Carthage would face new challenges and opportunities as they fought for supremacy in the ancient Mediterranean.